The life of Lionel Messi, the boy the world couldn't stop watching. Hello, my friend. It's truly good to have you here today. Find a comfortable place to sit, and let's begin. Have you ever been told that something wasn't meant for you? That you were too small, too weak, or too late? Most people hear that at least once in their lives, and most of them stop there. But this story is about a boy who didn't stop. A boy who was repeatedly told that his body would never allow his dream to exist, yet somehow went on to build a career that changed football forever. This is the story of Lionel Messi. He was born on June 24, 1987, in Rosario, Argentina, a city filled with noise, dust, and life. His family wasn't wealthy. His father worked in a steel factory, and his mother cleaned houses to support the family. But inside their home, there was always something else. The sound of a football hitting a wall over and over again. From the moment Lionel could walk, he followed the ball, not just kicking it, but as if it belonged to him. His father once said the ball seemed tied to his son's feet by an invisible string. At 5, he joined his first club. At 8, he moved to Newell's Old Boys. He was always the smallest on the pitch, and the other kids called him La Pulga, the flea. But that flea had something no one else did. When the ball touched his feet, everything changed. Speed no longer mattered. Size no longer mattered. Strength no longer mattered. It felt as if the entire game bent around him. His youth team went on an incredible winning streak, and coaches began whispering that something special was happening. But at the same time, his body was failing him. Around the age of 9, he stopped growing. At first, his family didn't worry, but by the time he was 11, the truth became unavoidable. He was diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency, a condition that required expensive treatment his family simply couldn't afford. Every night, Lionel had to inject himself with a needle into his leg. An 11-year-old boy alone in his room, holding a needle, learning discipline and pain in silence. This is where the real story begins, because greatness is not only built from talent, but from invisible moments no one sees. Clubs in Argentina promised support, then walked away. Bigger teams looked at the cost and refused. A boy with a dream and a body the world was unwilling to invest in, until a call came from Spain. FC Barcelona wanted to see him. He crossed the ocean, a small boy in a vast world. In his trial, he barely touched the ball, but it was enough. One scout immediately said, "Sign him." But even then, doubt remained. Too small, too risky, too uncertain. Days passed. His family waited in a hotel in Spain, unsure of their son's future. Then came a meeting that changed everything. No official contract, just a napkin, a pen, and a promise written in haste. Barcelona would sign Lionel Messi. They would pay for his treatment. They would bring him to Spain. A decision written on something so small, it barely seemed real, yet life often changes through the smallest moments. Messi moved to Barcelona at 13. A new country, a new life. A boy far from home, but closer to destiny than ever before. Years passed. He didn't grow much physically, but his talent grew beyond imagination. At 17, he made his first team debut. At 18, he scored his first goal, a delicate chip over the goalkeeper. Simple, effortless, perfect. From that moment on, the world began to understand this was not just another player. Barcelona built everything around him, around his movement and his left foot. And what followed became football history. Trophies arrived one after another, domestic titles, Champions League victories, and countless individual awards. Then came 2012, a year that should not have been possible. In just 12 months, Lionel Messi scored 91 goals. 91 times the ball crossed the line, breaking records that had stood for decades. A number that should not exist in reality, but it did. But greatness does not only rise, it also falls. In 2016, after another lost final with Argentina, Messi reached his breaking point. After the Copa America final, he announced his retirement from international football. 4 finals, 4 defeats, no trophies. Even the greatest player in the world can lose sight of the path ahead. But the world reacted. Fans cried. Argentina panicked. Leaders spoke out. And after weeks of pressure and reflection, he returned. Not because everything was fine, but because he couldn't truly walk away. Time passed again. The pain continued. Until 2021, when Argentina faced Brazil in the Copa America final. 1 goal decided everything. When the final whistle blew, Messi collapsed to the ground. Finally, a champion with his country. He cried as if years of weight had finally been lifted. But the story still wasn't over. A year later, after 21 years, he left Barcelona. Financial collapse forced the decision. He stood in front of the cameras and cried as he said goodbye to the only club he had ever known in Europe. A boy who arrived at 13 left at 34. He went to Paris, then later to the United States. Many thought the story was slowing down, but the machine didn't stop. At the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, Argentina started with a shocking defeat. It looked like the dream was over. But then everything changed. They kept winning match after match until they reached the final against France. What followed became one of the greatest matches in football history. Messi scored. Mbappe answered. The match went on for 120 minutes of chaos and emotion. Then came penalties. Messi stepped up and scored. Argentina were world champions. When the final penalty was converted, Messi fell to his knees, but this time in victory. The only missing trophy of his career was finally his. And even after that, he didn't stop. He moved to the United States and kept playing, kept scoring, kept doing what he has always done. Even now, in the final stage of his career, he still steps onto the pitch, still touches the ball, and somehow the game still bends around him. Because this is not just a football story, it is a story of persistence. A boy told no before he even understood what that meant. Pain turned into discipline. Silence turned into greatness. And perhaps the real lesson is this. Sometimes what the world calls a limitation is only the beginning of something it doesn't yet understand. Thank you for staying with this story. And if there is something inside you that the world doesn't understand yet, keep going step by step until the final whistle.